Hello, everybody. Time to consider the next week, and there are some factors in play, as there always is. Probably one of the more dynamic is the shift from air into water by our solar being at the center of our celestial dance place, our solar system. We're going to have the experience of Gemini wrapping up and Cancer beginning to put in an appearance. So, what all could we? What's the most appropriate way to embrace this shift of energy? Well, there's lots of people out there. They're talking about the summer solstice, the sun is coming to stand still directly overhead. Here in the northern hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, not quite the same. Ceremony, ritual. Yeah, these are things that you see a lot of people tune into as some sort of a celebration of this particular time frame that we're going through. Longest day of the year, shortest day in the South. But I want to dive just a wee bit more deeply into, you know, what this shift out of that curiosity inspired Gemini aspect into a zone of lunar influence. Yes, Cancer is ruled by the moon. Can you feel this shift of energy that's going to happen this week? That is your lunar part of you talking to you, saying, please tune in at, not so much that Gemini cerebral level, but more the heart essence. Some Cancer archetypes to consider. The healer, protector, matriarch, mother, nurturer, cook, or counselor. As a symbol, a mother nurtures her child. Two souls in loving union, opening the heart to the oneness of all life, being in the hearth of life. The symbol of the moon, two crescents, one inside the other. Spirit, the crescent, listening to its own inward being. The heart of humanity. Compassion through unconditional love. Love without conditions. Same thing, but from a slightly different perspective. You have to ask yourself. I came up with this thought the other day when I was in one of my shamanic drum groups. When we were, actually, no, this was when I was listening to and chatting with my friends who I attended fifth and sixth grade with back in Cairo, Egypt. We get together monthly to consider a lot of different things. But what, you know, this ponderable arrived that is kind of like always been there in my life. When we were considering the version of what others might represent to us. And a phrase that, I picked up, I don't even know how many years ago, but it is the difference between a friend and a stranger is that a stranger is a friend that you have not met yet. Think on that. That's more like an essay statement, something that you have to live into. Okay. One of the essences of Cancer in the zodiac is how tuned in am I to my tribal connections? And by extension, am I connected to my ancestors? I want to focus in on that ancestral connection. Many of us we're aware of the those members of our close blood family that either are or are not still with us. When you get to the ancestral considerations, you're stepping across that line into those on your wavelength that are likely not still incarnate here in the earth plane. Ancestors come in a variety of forms. And what I would like us to do is to attempt to draw a particular focus on those ancestral lineage beings that we have come from, that have not only lived, but died well. We're not interested in those, badass kind of ancestors that, may not have functioned in the most beneficial way toward the experience of what does it really mean to be human? Those selfish ones that didn't really care one iota about anything beyond themselves. Those are not the ancestors that I would invite us to tune into when we're thinking of the Cancerian lunar feeling connection that certain of our ancestral lineage lived into very dynamically. Now, many will have a version of ancestors that goes back 2 to 5 generations. Let's just throw that out there. Our great, great, great even grandparents. I would like us to invite ourselves to tune into much further back than those close ancestral beings that only exist back 3 to 5 generations ago. What about, you know, none of this 100-year-old stuff? How about 1,000 years back? What do you think your ancestors were doing? How about 5,000 years ago? Yeah, we had ancestors even back then. How about 10,000 or 100,000 years ago? What kind of energy would those ancestors be willing to offer to us in our current life experience from a perspective that was aimed at congeniality with one another, and by extension, with all of life, the plants, the trees, the animals, the actual energy of Gaia, planet Earth itself. We're going into the season of Cancer, where we're being invited to feel as deeply as we possibly can into the life root experience of who we really are. Way more than just this physical humanoid being stumbling around on planet Earth, trying to eke out an existence as best we can. There are factors always in play. If we are willing to tune into them, asking us, how tuned in am I to you? How tuned in are we to each other? Might there be influences from those ancestral linkages that we have way back along the way that are awaiting our awakening to the magic, that magnetic impulse of really tuning into each other with our hearts in an effective enough way that we can discover some level of trust within ourselves that we can share with one another. Welcome to Cancer. The heart during the Cancer season is just a little bit closer to the surface than we might normally recognize. Do you know how to nurture? Can you feel an ancestral linkage that came through that very passionate, nurturing essence and is awaiting your awakening to that essence? This may take a little bit of work, but I guarantee you it is worth it. In looking at one of Stephen Forrest's recent books on the subject of water, after all, Cancer is the first water sign of the zodiac in its natural unfolding cyclic process. I'll just read you a couple of the Cancerian considerations that have to do with the sign and the house. Cancer is the need to crawl inside our shells from time to time. In the fourth house, the Cancer house, we see you actually getting into your bed with a good book and your cell phone turned off. Ooh, yeah, there's a concept. Cancer is the longing for the company of your soul tribe. In the fourth house, we see you turning down the lights, lighting the fire in the fireplace, pouring the wine, and settling in for a long, soulful talk with 2 or 3 people whom you really love. Cancer is the need for a safe space. In the fourth house, we see you moving to a new home or a better neighborhood. Cancer is feeling tired after a long, hard day. In the fourth house, we see you going to bed early. Sense, if you will, that as we enter Cancer, the moon takes precedence. You will need to feel into the energy that is attempting to get your attention. Now, as the sun shifts into, which is Wednesday this week, Cancer, we should say, where is the moon? After all, every month, the moon makes a complete revolution around the zodiac. So as we enter this summer solstice, winter solstice in the south, the moon is making its way through Cancer. Let's pull up a chart and take a look. Yep, there's the chart for Monday, the 19th. But the solstice, you can kind of see the sun is down here, 28 degrees. Still got 2 days left to go. On the second day, boom, here's Wednesday. The sun has just shifted into the sign of Cancer. The moon is basically going through Leo here, 8 degrees and 26 minutes. I was born with my sun at 8 degrees and a few minutes of Aquarius, exactly opposite to this particular moon as the sun enters into Cancer. So my perspective from my Aquarian perch, shall we say, opposite this moon's, would ask me quite particularly, can I feel that, that pull of energy from the Leonian archetype? Leo is ruled by the sun. And here it is. The sun has just entered Cancer. The moon is in Leo sign, sun sign. And so these two the brightest energies that we have to deal with are in each other's signs as this Cancerian month begins. From the sun's perspective, I want to feel nurtured. From the lunar perspective in Leo, I need to uh, create and make an impression of some kind that will allow for some feedback to come from outside of myself so that I can understand my position just a little bit better. And this is the kind of energy that as we go through this summer winter solstice dance, celebration, ritual, ceremony is in play. One side of me is reaching out to engage with those ancestors who have been clamoring to get my attention, to be more, be willing, be more loving, be more caring and nurturing of this human experience and all that is involved with it. And from the lunar perspective in Leo, it's saying, do not do this quietly. Share that experience with others and see what kind of things develop. There's a push me pull you kind of an energy that's in play as we engage in this Cancerian dance this month that has that Leonian impulse right there at the beginning, saying, reach out, say hello to somebody else. Both Leo and the moon and Cancer are tuned into heart essence. This is not mental kind of energy that I'm talking about here. This is, this is your capacity of being tuned into, in touch with all of the natural environment, which, depending on how tuned in you are, really is absolutely everything. I find that, with this moon exactly opposite my natal sun right now, that Aquarian side of me says, reach out and touch someone, touch a lot of someone's. There's energy in play right now that beckons. It beckons group participation. Anyway, that's just my perspective. What else do we have happening this week? We have Mars, you can see here at 18 degrees of Leo, and Venus chasing right along there, just 4 degrees behind it. So we have our masculine and feminine essences here in that sign of Leo. So the moon, quickly, as it always does, moving along in this very day, is going to move over these two planets. I'll show you. We'll flip one day ahead and you can kind of see the moon has just tickled our Venus and Mars archetypes in the sign of Leo. Do not be in too much haste to attempt to demean either the masculine or the feminine archetypal energy of this living experience. They're both in very unique play right now. On this first day of Cancer, the moon danced, holding hands with both of them, which are themselves very close to holding hands energetically themselves. There is no one gender specificity that is more relevant than the other. This life that we live would be dull or maybe non existent if we try to take one or the other of those gender realities out of the equation. Sunday is the next aspect where the planets are making a very specific conversation with one another. And this would be the square from Mars over here to Uranus. Mars, action, impulse, drive, the and that striking out, initiation kind of energy. And with Uranus saying, take chances. You're in Leo. Don't hold yourself back in any fashion, because if you are going to awaken, there's Uranus giving you the opportunity. Utilize that impulsive Martian drive to test the larger waters of your existence that you are participating with on as large a scale as you can. Does it create waves? Oh, likely I would say yes, it does. But sometimes waves are required. Here's that sun and moon dance going around the planet, pulling the tides of life this way and that way. These are where waves come from. Our lunar aspect and our solar aspect, they're in play all the time, asking us quite specifically, are you paying attention to the tide of life that is at work within you? Do the dance. This is fun stuff, you know. Other people may not perceive you as you had expected. So what? We're doing the experience as our individual soul dictates is appropriate for us. Pay attention to that. Okay. Are you awake now to the Cancer impulse that's coming this week? Because that's all I'm going to talk about. Yeah, there are always other celestial stories that I could unfold into. I don't want to take up all your time. I just want you to be alive and awake enough. Ask your ancestors, those distant ancestors, to come and participate with you. And be clear. Make sure that you're asking those ancestors that have lived and died well to come into your dance moves. They have things to offer us that can be overtly of assistance in what it is that, as a soul being, we have come to accomplish together here on planet Earth. This is a unique and special place, this Earth, a proving grounds, if you were, for what it is or what does it mean to know soul. That's all for this week. I want you all to, do some soul searching. And if you're so inclined, astro shapeshifting or the lively astrologer, I am and willing to assist you in tapping just perhaps a little more profoundly into your particular soul dance that is beckoning your participation through the astrological tool and others. So, ciao for now.